Straight up, my favorite fight on this entire card. We have Dan Ige, Dynamite Dan, taking on the Guv'nor, Gavin Tucker. Matt, for a couple of guys from the East Coast of Canada, let's go! Here we go, big fight for Gavin Tucker. Finally, this is one of Joe Rogan's favorite fighters next to Uroš Medic. And Gavin Tucker, Matt, I mean, we were in attendance. UFC Halifax, 2017. Derek Lewis, well, I'd say he finished Travis Brown's career, but he kind of led to the demise of Mario Yamasaki as well. But the big winner of that night, Gavin Tucker beating the absolute brakes off Sam Sicilia. Listen, it was a Dominic Cruz-esque type of performance. It put Gavin Tucker on the map, so much so that when Gavin Tucker would fight subsequently, especially with the big pay-per-views, and I'm talking UFC 215, Joe Rogan was all over it. I mean, you had Tucker taking on the former World Series vet, Rick Glenn, and Rick Glenn boxed Gavin Tucker's face in.
It was one of those classic, I liken it a little bit to when Tim Means fought Sabah Homasi. And Sabah Homasi has all this hype behind him, and they're like, great, you're going to fight Tim Means. He's a little bit older now. You're probably not going to win. He's good technically, though. And then Tim Means is like, what did you just say? You think you're going to bring this young kid in to beat me? And Tim Means boxes that poor guy's ears in and TKOs him. Now, the difference was Gavin Tucker was too tough for his own good in that fight, and it should have been a stoppage, probably in the second round at some point. Because here's the thing. Tucker gets off to a great start. He wins the first, I'd say 4 minutes of the first round of that fight. He's using his great movement. But the problem for Tucker is in that fight, he was trying to knock Rick Glenn out, and he was throwing a lot behind his shots. And Gavin Tucker is not a knockout artist whatsoever. He's got great volume, he has very good technical striking, but he's not a fighter who should go out there looking for the knockout. If it presents itself, great, it might. He has great technique, like we said, but he's not someone who can go out there and just take your head off with one shot, a la Jeremy Stevens. That's what he tried to do against Rick Glenn, and you could tell he got tired so fast in that fight. And for Tucker, his cardio is normally such an asset that he can almost weaponize it against his opponents. We saw it against Seungwoo Choi in his next fight. We even saw it to a lesser degree against Justin James, where he can just go out there and he fights with such a hectic pace that he can break down his opponents with it.
And in the Billy Q fight, I mean, Gavin kept looking good in that fight. The thing that I loved, you can go back, I'm going to find the highlight on Twitter and I'll drop it somewhere, but there's one spot where he dips to his left, 1, 2, 3, and then he's out on his right, and he's totally out of space, and he does such a good job of moving in and out, of really going away from that lead hand, because, I mean, really, for Gavin Tucker, you're not taking on a lot of fellow southpaws, and the other thing that he has, very sneaky wrestling. He's a decent defensive wrestler, pretty good offensive wrestling, really good jiu-jitsu, and that's the thing. I mean, a guy fighting at a Titans MMA out of Bears Lake in Nova Scotia, you know, you're driving by on the highway, there's Costco, there's the IMAX. What else is there? There's Cardabon, the indoor go-kart track.
Yeah.
And then there's Titans MMA. And listen, you might think of the Maritimes, us slower people here in Canada. We never adjust like the rest of Canada does. And then you go down to Halifax. Chris Kalades. You've got, what? The man himself, Gavin Tucker. What about the best fighter that we've had of the Maritimes, Matt? That's from Halifax
TJ Grant.
TJ Grant. So Gavin Tucker, kind of the second coming. Now, I have to say all of that to start this because I don't want to give it a homer vibe. I've picked against Gavin Tucker in a number of fights. I'll admit it. Like Drake would say. More Canadian vibes. But I look at this fight. Dan Ige is the type of guy. He came into the UFC and lost his debut. I was actually in attendance for both of these guys' debuts. I was at UFC 220 and I saw Dan Ige lose to Julio Arce. And I've said since then, and I'll say it again, I'd love to see those guys fight every day. I'd love to see him fight every Saturday. It was a great fight when it happened.
Ige's a lot better now.
But for Dan Ige, since then, win over Mike Santiago, you beat Jordan Griffin, you beat Danny Henry, you beat Kevin Aguilar, you outdo Mirsad Bektic, you beat Edson Barboza, and then you lose, well, handily to Calvin Kattar. He's originally supposed to be taking on Ryan Hall in this spot. Hall out, Tucker in. So for me, Dan Ige had that huge win streak. 6 fights in a row against good competition. I don't think he beat Edson Barboza. I watched that on my phone out in the woods when I was camping. That's dedication. But I did. And, you know, I really didn't think Ige won that fight. But I look at all of these wins. Even if you're beating Mirsad Bektic by split, that's all right. You're winning these fights. You beat Kevin Aguilar, wrestler. You beat Danny Henry. Listen, Danny Henry's not what we expected after the Hakeem Dawodu fight, Canadian. But that's a pretty good win to have. Dan Ige, very, very consistent. Dan Ige is the most classic extreme couture fighter. And Gavin Tucker's already fought one of those guys in Justin James. So this will be a really interesting fight. I think Dan Ige has a little bit more in terms of hand speed and volume than James does. But Dan Ige's got that kind of same ilk, or he's cut from the same cloth as Gavin Tucker, because Ige doesn't really go away.
No, he doesn't. He's a guy who will be in your face for all 5 rounds, and that's the crazy thing. Danny Ige's a member of the 5-round club, and that cannot be understated, because if you go 5 rounds with a guy like Calvin Kattar, who's always going to be there, throws a lot of volume and has a lot of power, that really proves something about yourself. Now, I do have to say this about Danny Ige. I truly think he's the most beatable fighter in the top 15 of featherweight right now, because you look at his 2 best wins, it is a split decision over Mirsad Bektic, and I thought he won that fight, don't get me wrong. I did think Danny Ige beat him, but it was a fairly close fight, and I didn't think he won against Edson Barbosa at all. I thought that's one of the worst decisions I've ever seen in MMA. I really did. Edson completely outstrikes him. Yes, Danny Ige was able to get Edson to the mat a couple times in that fight, but when it's on the feet, Danny Ige struggles with those top tier strikers. He's a good striker himself, but the fact that A, he doesn't really throw any kicks, and B, he doesn't have crippling power by any means. He can hurt you with his hands, but it's more of a knockdown kind of a power than he has knockout power. And against someone like Gavin Tucker, we've seen his chin get checked before. Rick Glenn put it on him. Justin James was able to drop him.
Sungwoo Choi even had moments.
Sungwoo Choi, exactly. Even Sungwoo Choi had moments against him. These guys are both going to struggle against the top tier strikers in the UFC. But the great thing about it is these are MMA fights. These aren't just kickboxing fights. And that's what makes this so fun. They are both so well rounded that it will be interesting to see who goes for the first takedown. And really, that's what I'm going to be looking for. Because if Gavin Tucker's shooting on Danny Ige, that means that there's something in the striking that Gavin Tucker is not feeling comfortable with. And for Danny Ige, if he's the one shooting on Gavin Tucker, I think he'll have the higher likelihood for getting Tucker to the mat. The defensive wrestling of Danny Ige is phenomenal, and I don't know if someone like Tucker can get him to the ground unless he does time it off of strikes in some capacity. For Danny Ige, I think this is a case, and we kind of talked about this from Sean Brady fought Jake Matheus. These are 2 guys who are really good at everything. I just think Danny Ige might be slightly better at a few different areas than Gavin Tucker.
And I mean, you look at it for Danny Ige, he's got a judo background, he's a former collegiate wrestler, he's got jiu-jitsu in his back pocket. For Gavin Tucker, again, maybe the pedigree's in there for the wrestling. His jiu-jitsu is very good, Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt, but it's just weird. I mean, Gavin Tucker kind of almost came out of nowhere on this Halifax card. Oh, it's a guy from Newfoundland that trains out of Halifax. Let's put him on a main card of a fight night and see what happens in his debut. And then he just continues along, and it's almost like he's a folk hero. He's got the wacky tattoos. I mean, everybody seems to like him. He wears a little fisherman's cap. Like, Gavin Tucker, people like him. People like him in the States. People like him all over the place.
He's got the it factor.
He's got the it factor. So for me, if we look at the Topology votes, 969 of them, 69% on Ige. For both these guys, majority of the fans think it's going to go by decision. If we look at the odds, Matt, Ige opened to minus 145, minus 143 right now, but the line dropped on Tucker early. It's coming back on Ige now. Tucker plus 125 now to plus 118. Again, the money's kind of coming in on Ige right now. For me, Ige's taken on the tougher level of competition. The other thing that I think plays a little bit of a part in this one, Ige was getting ready for Ryan Hall. Gavin Tucker was getting ready for Cub Swanson. So, very different change of opponents for both of these guys in this one.
It really is, but I think we're going to get the best version of whatever fights we were supposed to be promised in the first place. Now Cub Swanson's fighting Giga Chikadze. That fight's insane. And now Gavin Tucker's just fighting, I'm not going to say a better version of himself, but just a very similar fighter to what he already is. And here's the thing. If Gavin Tucker ever wants to get in the top 15 of 145, and I'm assuming that's his goal, this is his best chance to do it. I just look at the other guys who are ranked in the top 15. You got guys like Sadiq Youssef, like Edson Barbosa, like Calvin Kattar,
like Arnold Allen.
Even Arnold Allen, who can defend all of your takedowns and then threaten you with not only power but volume. So I'm going to pick Danny Ige in this fight, but if Gavin Tucker is getting into the top 15, Danny Ige is going to be his ticket.
Let's go Canada, Matt. Going with Gavin Tucker. And listen, the reason why I like Tucker, it's the lateral movement and the scrambles. Danny Ige is great in all of the same positions, and I really do liken it, like you said, to the Jake Matheus fight against Sean Brady. Matheus had success in the first round with the striking. Second, third round, all Brady. I think that could play out a lot like this, or this could play out a lot like that, rather. But I do like the striking of Gavin Tucker in this one. I like the fact that, listen, we fought one guy. Now, this could play into Ige's hands. I fought a guy in Justin James that trains with Dan Ige. Listen, Ige's already trained
a much better version of
with James to get ready for it. So we'll see how it plays out. But again, the takedown defense of Tucker a little bit more porous, but he can threaten with more submissions than we've seen Dan Ige go for. So I do like Tucker in this fight. I'm really excited for this one. This should be such a good fight. We've got 3 Canadians on the card. Tucker, Jourdain, and Misha Serkinov. I love it. I'm going Tucker. You're going Ige. Really looking forward to the card. So you're going to have to keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, Matt. As we always say, let's get into it.